When someone finds out I'm a fan of the original MacGyver, the question they ask me most often is, "What's your favorite invention?" Actually, that's not true. The question I'm asked most often after someone finds out I'm a fan of MacGyver is, "Do you like Stargate?" Which, yeah, I get it. Richard Dean Anderson is the star of both shows, but when someone finds out I like Star Trek, their first question is never, "Do you like TJ Hooker?" I don't know. So maybe the second most common question I get as a MacGyver fan is, "What's your favorite invention?" To which I have a stock response. It's a tie between the printing press and those grocery store mobile apps that let you scan and bag your items as you shop. Then the person says, "No, I meant what's your favorite MacGyver invention?" And I say, "Oh, that's easy." Because I have a stock response for that, too. The shorthand for the inventions and improvisations MacGyver comes up with in most of the episodes of the show is MacGyverism. When MacGyver makes bombs out of pine cones, or uses eggs to plug holes in the radiator of a Jeep, or rigs a vending machine to automatically eject soda cans to distract some guards. That's a MacGyverism. Throughout the 7 seasons of the show, we see hundreds of them, and there are some popular favorites, like the time MacGyver made a hot air balloon out of a parachute and some scraps of fabric he found lying around an abandoned mine, or the time MacGyver made a parasail out of a fan and some material he cut out of the side of a tent, or the time MacGyver made a 2-person ultralight aircraft out of bamboo, duct tape, and trash bags. But, believe it or not, my favorite MacGyverism is not any of those. It's not even one of the other popular ones that are often celebrated by fans of the show or mocked by those who enjoy making fun of the show. I feel a strong attraction to both of those groups. Incidentally, I'm bi when it comes to MacGyver. Anyway, my favorite MacGyverism comes from the show's first season, the richest vein of MacGyverisms in the entire run, when the dude was just rattling off half a dozen inventions per episode. MacGyvering like there was no tomorrow. Maybe if he'd known he'd have to do this for 6 more years, he would have paced himself a little. Regardless, the episode I'm talking about is the 7th episode of MacGyver, originally airing November 17, 1985, and it's titled Last Stand. MacGyver is driving out into the middle of nowhere in Arizona in search of a place called Sparrow Lake, where he used to go fishing with his dad when he was a kid. He stops at an airport/diner to ask for directions and walks into an oddly tense scene. There's a waitress, Kelly, a guy at the counter in mechanics coveralls, Dave, a cook, Tennyson, and 2 other guys, Terry and Buddy, who seem like customers, only when MacGyver walks in, Terry says, "Sorry, we're closed," like he's the boss or something. Also, we can see that Buddy is carrying a semi-automatic rifle, which is probably not going to lead to good things. Picking up on the something's wrong here vibe, MacGyver ignores Terry's "we're closed" announcement and sits down at the counter for a cup of coffee. Kelly serves MacGyver's coffee in her special help cup, which Buddy immediately notices and shows to Terry, who at that point drops the act and just tells MacGyver to order something to eat and get comfortable, and also to empty out his pockets because, yeah, this is a robbery. What kind of a robbery? As it turns out, an armored truck robbery. Only thing is, the armored truck isn't here yet. It arrives shortly, though, hidden in the trailer of an 18-wheeler being driven by Terry's associates Turk and Elias. Turk lays eyes on Kelly and immediately tries to impress her with his Humphrey Bogart impression, but it doesn't work because his Bogart isn't that good, and also he's a member of a violent gang of criminals. Terry takes a second to brag to MacGyver about how eclectic his team is. "Surprised to see such a diverse group of individuals working with a man like me?" he asks. See, Terry's not just a guy with a crew trying to steal some stuff. He's one of those villains of the week types who the writers try to flesh out by giving him a whole deal. He's not just a thief. He's a thief with a philosophy. "This job was planned down to the last detail and timed perfectly," he says proudly to MacGyver in particular, because I guess he knows MacGyver is the protagonist and really wants to impress him. Turk backs the armored truck down out of the trailer, and Kelly notices that there's still a guard inside the back, the inside man stationed in the back with the loot. Terry explains that the guard doesn't have a key to the door, so he has no way out, and they have no way in, because I guess when they stole the armored truck, they didn't bother to lift the keys off the other guards who they stole it from. I thought the job was planned down to the last detail, Terry. Why didn't your plan include getting the keys? Terry? Terry's solution to the no keys quandary is to have Buddy put a bomb on the back of the armored truck and blow the door off. MacGyver points out that the explosion will not only kill the guard inside, it will probably burn up all the money they're trying to steal as well. I'm beginning to feel slightly suspicious that perhaps Terry isn't actually the criminal mastermind he presents himself as. But, luckily for Terry, and the guard in the back, MacGyver has a solution. He volunteers to open the armored truck safely, in a way that won't damage the guard or the money. And it's at this point that he invents my favorite MacGyverism. Turk asks how MacGyver plans to open the door, and MacGyver tells him, casually, as though it's the most obvious thing in the world, as though he assumes everyone else was already thinking the same thing, "I'll make a thermite torch out of that bicycle over there." Terry, who receives this suggestion calmly, as though it's a reasonable and not at all bonkers thing for one human being to say to another, says, "Okay, MacGyver, you can try to open the armored car by making a thermite torch out of a bicycle." And then that's exactly what MacGyver does. He takes apart the bicycle, shaves some filings off of its frame, mixes it with some rust scraped off of an old paint can, packs it into a length of pipe, ignites it with a road flare, and there you go, an improvised cutting tool capable of opening an armored car in a matter of seconds. The body of the bike is made of magnesium, see? And apparently when you mix magnesium with ferric oxide, the rust, and pack it into a pipe and light it on fire, you get a super hot torch that can slice through an armored car. I've never tried it. Anyway, MacGyver uses his torch to cut the lock out of the armored car's door, pops the door open, and everybody is an appropriate level of impressed, except for the guard, who staggers out and is immediately shot and killed by Buddy, because Buddy is the mean one. MacGyver and Dave are forced to dig a grave for the guard, because the crooks don't want buzzards flying around and tipping anyone off to their criminal shenanigans. Right, because when anyone sees buzzards circling in a remote scrub desert like this area, their first thought is, there must be a murdered human being somewhere nearby, let's go investigate. As they start to dig, MacGyver notices an old fire truck in the garage right next to them, and a helicopter sitting on a pad nearby. He asks Dave if he knows how to fly, and Dave says, "I used to be a medevac pilot, but I don't fly anymore because of my tragic backstory where I was shot down in Vietnam and held prisoner for over a year and forced to dig graves, and the last grave I dug was supposed to be for me, but then instead of killing me, my captors just laughed, sorry." MacGyver's like, "It's cool." Turk, who is watching them from the garage, is like, "Hey, enough exposition, you two. That grave ain't gonna dig itself." Later, after they're done planting the guard, Kelly gets a call on the radio from a plane that's on the way to the airport. Terry is planning to commandeer the plane for their getaway, so he orders Kelly to tell the plane to land as scheduled. The pilot informs Kelly that his plane is in need of some minor repairs, which Dave warns he might not be able to fix, but Terry's not worried about that. If Dave can't fix it, surely MacGyver can. Turk goes back out to the garage with MacGyver and Kelly so MacGyver can scrounge for parts to fix the plane, and after they exit, Buddy informs Terry of his intention to kill MacGyver before they leave the airport, presumably because Buddy is threatened by MacGyver's mechanical competence, effortless charm, and flawless hair, and this is pre-mullet, mind you. While they pretend to look for airplane parts, MacGyver and Kelly discuss Dave's backstory some more. Dave and Kelly are a couple, but it's been difficult since Dave's horrific experience as a Vietnam POW has turned him into a giant wuss. Luckily, MacGyver has an escape plan involving the fire truck that won't require Dave to fly the big scary helicopter. First, MacGyver takes care of Turk by caving in the side of his skull with a spare part. Then, he and Kelly use a can of starter fluid, cotton from a seat cushion, some fertilizer, and a newspaper to do a variation on one of MacGyver's favorite inventions. Bombs. Seriously, especially in the early seasons of the show, MacGyver is always making bombs. He can make a bomb out of almost anything. He's ardently anti-gun, which I love him for, but he's enthusiastically pro-bomb. Well, at least when it comes to little bombs, anyway. There's a limit to how much you can like bombs while still being one of the good guys. I believe the boundary is called the Henry Kissinger event horizon. Kelly leaves MacGyver to his bomb making and heads back inside the diner. When MacGyver sets off the first bomb, Terry and the other bad guys run out the front door to see what's going on, and Kelly, Dave, and Tennyson flee out the side door and make for the fire truck. A chase ensues, with Terry shooting at the fire truck as they all speed down the runway. MacGyver bums a light from Dave for another bomb and uses it to knock Terry and Elias out of the pursuit, but Buddy speeds ahead on his motorcycle and shoots out the tires of the fire truck, leading to Mac, Kelly, Dave, and Tennyson being recaptured. The pilot in the charter plane arrives, and Terry heads out with Dave to meet him. Terry pretends to be a customer taking a fishing trip for about 10 seconds, and then he says, "Oh, to hell with it," and pulls a gun on the pilot. Meanwhile, Buddy, Turk, and Elias have put Tennyson to work in the kitchen making sandwiches for their plane trip and locked MacGyver and Kelly in the walk-in freezer to keep them from making any more trouble. Dave and the pilot work on repairing the plane, and in the diner, MacGyver disassembles the door and improvises a way out of the freezer while Kelly shares some more of her backstory. She and Dave were together before he went to Vietnam. She thought he was dead while he was a POW, so she moved on and got married. But it didn't work out, so now she's back with Dave, who returned from Vietnam with emotionally crippling PTSD as a bonus. Not wanting to rest on his laurels after the bicycle torch bit, MacGyver decides to open the freezer door by holding up a chunk of ice to the light bulb, which melts the ice into water, which runs down a rail MacGyver has hung from the light to the door, into the door lock, where it freezes back into ice and expands, eventually popping out the lock and enabling MacGyver to smash through the door. Incredibly, all of this happens within a few minutes. The plane is repaired, so everyone is headed back inside the diner so Buddy can kill them and leave no eyewitnesses behind. Before they get there, MacGyver tapes a few more of his bombs onto a remote-controlled toy plane and drives it underneath the wing of the real plane, where it explodes. Worrying that MacGyver could throw another bomb at the plane after it takes off and ruin their whole day, Terry sends the gang out on a hunt. Dave, Kelly, Tennyson, and the pilot hide in the garage. MacGyver takes out Turk by tripping him and tying him up. Terry gets impatient and says, "Hey, did you find MacGyver yet?" And Buddy, in his inimitable way, responds, "I'll look around, brother." Actually, I shouldn't say inimitable because that was one hell of a Buddy I did just now. If you've seen the episode lately, you can back me up in the comments. I fucking nailed it. That was an A+ Buddy. In the garage, Dave tells Kelly, "I can't fly that helicopter." And Kelly says, "No, you won't fly it because you're a shell-shocked fucking coward. There's a difference." Tennyson chimes in with some wise words about this being a moment of truth for Dave. So Dave sneaks over to the helicopter, but he just can't bring himself to do anything but stand next to it and cry. MacGyver knocks out Elias, then runs over to the helicopter, where Dave says, "Hey, why can't we just let them go? I don't care if they stole some money." "They killed a man," MacGyver reminds him. "Remember? The guy whose grave we dug? I care about that." And Dave's like, "Oh, fucking morality, what a pain in the ass." So while MacGyver runs over to the airplane, where Terry and Buddy are preparing to take off, Buddy's a pilot, by the way, Dave finds the courage to climb into the helicopter and take off. MacGyver climbs onto the tail of the plane and turns the rudder, causing the plane to drive around in circles on the runway. Terry jumps out to shoot MacGyver off, but Dave swoops in with the chopper and clips Terry from behind. That just leaves Buddy, who stops the plane and jumps out for his long-awaited one-on-one with MacGyver. MacGyver bests the psychotic murderer in solo combat, and Dave lands the helicopter and runs over to help out, grabbing Buddy's gun and passing it to Tennyson, who happily uses it to march Buddy away to, wait for the cops to show up, I guess. Dave gives Kelly a big hug and says, "As soon as the rest of these people are gone, you and I are going to make sweet love to completion. And if I scream and cry, it will be from pleasure, not terrifying POW torture flashbacks, because I'm cured, baby." See, all Dave had to do in order to permanently get over his fear of flying the helicopter was fly the helicopter. Living through this new trauma canceled out his old trauma, because that's how that works. As long as you've been traumatized an even number of times, you're good. Last Stand is a pretty solid first season MacGyver episode. It's got a supporting cast full of well-drawn, albeit stereotypical and predictable characters. It, like the subject of my previous MacGyver video, the episode Birthday, begins with MacGyver unknowingly entering an ongoing situation and getting pulled into an adventure, which I love. And it's got some truly top-quality MacGyvering. And I'm not even counting Mac using this airplane part he finds lying around in the garage to crush the side of Turk's face. By the way, yes, that is Jackie Earle Haley as Turk. He would go on to play Rorschach in the Watchmen movie and Freddy Krueger in the reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street that nobody asked for, wanted, or saw. That's one of the fun little side benefits of watching a show like MacGyver. You never know who's going to show up. If you think about it, Rorschach is kind of like MacGyver. Sure, he's a violent, unstable, misanthropic, right-wing conspiracy theorist, but he does exhibit a certain improvisational genius. As a great man once said, everyone's blessed with one special thing. For proper MacGyverisms, there's MacGyver's little cotton and fertilizer bombs, which he uses only to create distractions, not to actually hurt anyone. There is the intuitive genius of using ice to escape from a freezer. Would that actually work? I have no idea, but that's not the point. I assume most MacGyverisms won't actually work in real life, or at least wouldn't work as quickly and effectively as they do in the show. The point is, do they make sense in context, and does the cleverness of the invention override how preposterous it is? I think all of the MacGyverisms in Last Stand pass that test. But that bicycle torch, man, that's MacGyvering on a different level. It's the sort of seemingly random, out-of-nowhere invention that makes sense in hindsight that we all wish we would be able to come up with in the same situation. For some of us, it might be more than a wish. I think many of us MacGyver fans secretly, or maybe even not so secretly, believe that we would be able to do something like build a torch out of the filed-down body of a bicycle and some rust. It's a result of the relatable everyman quality Richard Dean Anderson brings to the character. It doesn't look difficult when he does it, so why couldn't I do it? Like, if I were trapped in this room, I bet I could use, this stool and take it apart using my Swiss Army knife, which I always carry because I watched MacGyver when I was a kid, and then I could file down one of the legs using the file in my knife, which would produce aluminum powder, which is explosive. So I could take this candle and use my knife to dig all the wax out of it and fill the jar with the aluminum dust and cut off the longest power cord I can find on one of the many electrical devices in this room and fray the ends of the cord and stick it in the jar with the dust and close the lid and tie the jar onto the knob of the front door over there using my belt or maybe one of my socks in case I need to use the belt to zip line later, take the plug end of the power cord a safe distance from the door and plug it in, sending electricity into the jar, triggering the explosion and blowing the doorknob and the lock off of the door, freeing myself before I succumbed to the poison gas or whatever the ticking clock threat was. I don't know, I forgot to mention that at the start. Piece of cake.